Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to get into the science of what gets you fired up for the day and, well, what makes you just want to pull the covers back over your head.
So let's dive in. We are talking about two huge, massive forces that really shape our work lives. First, what actually makes us tick. And second, what happens when that motivation just runs dry.
Okay, so first up, let's tackle this puzzle that has seriously split psychologists for decades. The big question is, do things like bonuses or a pat on the back actually help us stay motivated? Or do they secretly kill our inner drive?
So, you've got these two camps, right? In one corner, you've got the folks who say, hey, if you pay someone for something they already love doing, you're basically ruining it for them. But in the other corner, you have people arguing that no, rewards are like rocket fuel. They can send your motivation soaring. So, who's actually right here?
Well, it turns out the answer is kind of both, and neither. A bunch of really fascinating new studies are showing that everyone was missing this one crucial piece of the puzzle. It's not about if you get a reward, it's about when.
Okay, so how on earth do you even test something like that? Well, scientists got pretty creative. They came up with some really clever experiments designed to figure out just how much timing really matters for that internal fire, our intrinsic motivation.
So, let's put you in the shoes of a participant. You come in, you're asked to do a pretty straightforward reading task. Then they split you into one of three groups. Group 1, you get a small reward. Bam, right away. Group 2, you're told you'll get that same reward, but you gotta wait 3 days. And Group 3, the control group, well, you get nothing extra. The big question here is, how did this tiny change affect how much people actually enjoyed the read?
And wow, the results were pretty clear. They used this tool, the Intrinsic Motivation Inventory, which is really just a fancy way of scoring how much people genuinely liked the task. And look at this. The group that got the immediate reward, their score shot way up. Way higher than the other two. It's almost like that instant reward flipped a switch inside their heads that said, hey, this is actually fun.
But, good scientists are always skeptical. They had to wonder, was this a real boost in motivation? Or were people just happy because they got a little something, and that good feeling was kind of bleeding over and coloring their memory of the task?
This is a classic thing in psychology. It's called the misattribution effect. It's basically when our brains get confused and link a feeling to the wrong thing. It's like you go on a fantastic first date, and you walk away thinking, wow, that person was amazing, but you can't be sure if it was their personality or the absolutely incredible coffee you were both drinking.
Right, it's the classic movie versus popcorn problem. Did you really love the movie, or did you just love the giant tub of buttery popcorn you were eating? To really prove their point, the researchers had to figure out a way to separate the two. So that's exactly what they did. They ran a whole series of follow-up tests. First, they messed with when they measured motivation, just to make sure it wasn't some temporary high. Then, and this is pretty clever, they unexpectedly swapped the reward timing on people to see what would happen. And for the final test, they put a bigger, delayed reward up against a smaller, immediate one. It was a showdown, really, to see what we value more, size or speed.
And through all of this, the result was rock solid every single time. It wasn't just people being in a good mood. It wasn't them doing some quick math in their head about the reward. No, the simple fact that the reward was immediate was genuinely making the task feel more interesting, more valuable.
All right, so we've established that small, quick rewards can be like a tune-up for our motivation engine. But what happens when you're stuck in a place with zero rewards and just constant, grinding stress? Well, that's when the engine doesn't just sputter, it completely breaks down. And that, my friends, is burnout, which leads us to our next big psychological debate.
So the word burnout gets thrown around a lot, right? But what does it actually mean, scientifically? Well, it's a state of total exhaustion, emotional, physical, you name it, caused specifically by long-term stress at work. But here's the controversy. For years, people have been arguing about whether burnout is its own unique thing, or if it's really just depression wearing a different hat.
So, the researchers who argue it is unique say burnout has three core components. First, there's that bone-deep exhaustion, just feeling completely drained. Second is cynicism. That's when you start feeling detached, cynical, and just super negative about your job. And the third piece is a lack of efficacy. It's that awful nagging feeling that you're just not good at your job anymore, that nothing you do matters.
Now here's the key difference they point to. It's all about context. Burnout is supposedly job-specific. You could feel absolutely miserable at work, but then you go on vacation and, hey, you feel pretty good. Depression, on the other hand, doesn't really care where you are. It's pervasive. It follows you everywhere, from the office to your home, and yeah, even on that vacation.
So to try and finally put this debate to rest, researchers decided to go big, like really big. They didn't just run one more study. They did what's called a meta-analysis. They basically gathered up the results from over 100 different studies and crunched all that data together to get the clearest possible answer.
And what did they find? They found this number, 0.526. Now, that's a correlation coefficient, and I know that sounds super technical, but what it means is actually pretty simple. It shows a really strong positive connection between burnout and depression. Think of it like this. Burnout and depression are like two friends who are almost always hanging out. If you see one of them, there's a really good chance the other one is right there with them.
But, and this is a huge but, even with that super strong link, the researchers' final conclusion was crystal clear. Burnout and depression are not the same thing. They are different. Yeah, they share a lot of the same symptoms, and they often grow side by side, kind of like two different vines wrapping around the same tree. But they are, at their core, two separate issues.
Okay, so we've dug into the surprising power of a reward right now, and we've untangled the difference between burnout and depression. So what? What does this all mean for us in our actual day-to-day lives? Why should you care?
Well, this research really hands us two super powerful ideas to work with. First, the power of now. Using small, immediate rewards isn't some cheap gimmick. It's a real, science-backed tool to light a fire under your own genuine motivation. And second, getting the diagnosis right. Understanding that burnout is about your work environment, it's not some personal failing, is absolutely the most important first step to actually fixing it.
And this stuff has very real-world applications. If you're a manager, maybe it means that more frequent, smaller bonuses or even just shout-outs work better than one big annual bonus. For you and me personally, we can totally hack this system. You know, make a rule that you only get to listen to your favorite podcasts while you're at the gym. Boom, immediate reward. And maybe most importantly, when we correctly label burnout as a workplace problem, it gives us the power to push for changes in our environment instead of just trying to fix ourselves.
So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a pretty big question, a challenge really. How can we start designing workplaces that are smarter about this stuff? How do we build companies that understand the power of now to motivate people, but that also know how to spot the signs of burnout and, more importantly, do something about its root causes? Ultimately, how do we create jobs and workplaces where people can actually thrive and not just get by?